Hey bookworms, welcome back and happy holidays. Do you guys notice anything different, like a much better picture and sound quality? That's because I got the best present for Christmas from my family. I actually got a new camcorder and I'm so excited to film my first video in my new camera. I'm actually looking, right at the camera and I'm so happy. So let's put this camera to good use and talk about the latest book that I've read, which is The Watchmaker of Filigree. This is the debut novel of Natasha Pulley. And I mentioned it in my previous haul video. If you've seen it, you probably noticed that, no one recommended this book to me. I just happened to see it in a bookshop. And once again, I was drawn to the cover. That's the first thing that you see. It has a watch here. And from what's written on the back, it seemed like a very cool steampunk Victorian sci-fi kind of a book. And since I like those, I bought this book and read it. This story is indeed a Victorian type book. It sets in Victorian era, which means the 19th century London, and it kind of centers on three characters. The first is a female scientist, the second is a brilliant watchmaker who makes almost magical clockwork creations, and the third is a regular, normal, average man who receives a mysterious watch and wants to find out what's behind it. And the lives of all three are kind of intertwined, and I think that's where I leave it in terms of plot. Now, as much as I was excited to read this book, and there were a few things that I liked about it, I do have complaints, and I just want to warn you in advance, it will sound like a rant, and I feel terrible about it. I don't want to bash this book because it's a debut novel, because it is technically a steampunk book, and I'll get to the technically a bit later, and I just feel terrible about saying bad things about it, but I did have complaints, so I just wanted to warn you in advance. Let's start at the beginning with the genre. I said it was technically a steampunk book. I'm sorry for the air quotes, I usually hate when people do that. It's also technically a fantasy book because it also has some fantasy elements, and usually I really dislike it when people are combining science fiction and fantasy, because a lot of times I feel like it's not on purpose, that the author either didn't know the difference or couldn't pick which way to choose, but I don't want to speculate because I honestly don't know why she chose this path. But that's not the problem. The problem is that both genres aren't the main genres of this book. They're kind of like the sideshow here, which I felt was a bit odd. Imagine a Harry Potter novel told from the point of view of Dursleys. I mean, magic would exist in this world. Every now and then they would maybe talk about it, or Harry will do a magic trick. But that's not the main point of the book. And some of you are probably wondering, okay, then what's the point of creating a book like that? And you're right, you have a point there. But now let's get to the actual issue here, which was the thing that annoyed me most and had the most, impact on why I wasn't too crazy about this book, and that's the writing, and that's the actual words that she uses, which also affect the way the characters are shown. First of all, there were many times where I would read a sentence and I would have to reread it in order to actually understand what's said. There is this thing called garden path in linguistics, you can check it out, where you read a sentence and you think the words are connected to each other in a certain way, and then you realize it doesn't make sense and you have to go back and reread it. And if you're interested, you can just search garden path linguist or whatever in Google. I will not explain more about this because it's not the point here. So that happened a lot of times. And another thing that happened tons of times and drove me nuts, and seriously, it happened over and over again, otherwise I wouldn't be mentioning it. And then you had a conversation between two people, two men, and they would be referred to as a pronoun, he. So the conversation would go back and forth, and you have no idea who is talking, because he said doesn't help when both participants are men. So you have no idea who's talking, and then a person will say something, blah blah, he said, and then you will have a sentence like, only after a minute he noticed he was still waiting for an answer or something. And then another quote, he said, he who? Who's talking? Technically it can be both men. and it drove me nuts. It was really hard to follow, and you have to continue reading the conversation until you have a certain clue to who is talking. Then sometimes you have to go back and reread the conversation, now knowing who's saying what, in order to actually understand the conversation in a way that makes sense. And it's a bit difficult when it happens all the time in a book. And just generally, something about the language and the words that she uses did not enable me to actually sink into the plot and get lost in it. And yeah, that wasn't a lot of fun. And then come the characters, which most times I found either really annoying or very cliche or simply vague. I mean, not all of them. I did like the character of the watchmaker, and I like Thaniel, who's like the straight man here, the ordinary man, who I thought was also the protagonist. And surprisingly, I really disliked the female character, which usually, you know, as a woman, I tend to like the strong female character, which she really wasn't. But, you know, okay, that's fine, you know. I'm perfectly fine with cliches to some extent. I'm perfectly fine with characters I don't really like or I'm not connected to. But what I'm not okay with are characters, abundance of characters, that I cannot understand. I cannot even begin to understand where they're coming from and who they are and what they want. Once again, it has to do with the words that she uses, with the language, but for the most part, I could not understand the motives behind characters. They would do stuff and I would technically understand why, but not really what's behind it. For example, and it's not a spoiler, just making things up. So let's say there is a character who wants to murder a different character. I would understand that she wants to do it. I would understand why she would say that and do that and like take the knife and put it in her bag. I know all of this is part of the plan to murder a certain character, and I would get that. But what I couldn't for the life of me get is why would she want to murder this other character? I mean, it was just annoying. Not a reason good enough to want to murder him, and it's really difficult to the extent of almost impossible to connect and to relate with the book and with characters when you can't really understand where they're coming from. I mean, there is a character who goes missing at a certain point, and a different character, you know, I would think that he would get upset or worried, and I couldn't see if he's upset or worried. I mean, he would do things, but, you know, I'm not expecting there to be a sentence, he was very worried. There are other ways to show it, like a description like his heart was pounding, or something that he did or thought about to make it look as if he's worried that this other person had gone missing, but there weren't any signs to this, which made it look as if he doesn't care, which is odd in these sort of circumstances. And to make things worse, the structure of the plot is crap. I'm sorry. I feel terrible, but that's actually what I thought about this book. I mean, most of the book seemed like an introduction to a page-and-a-half climax that wasn't really exciting, didn't really solve anything, didn't really make sense. Maybe it didn't make sense to me because some of the words that were used, like, I just couldn't understand what's really going on. Do you know, like, there's a section with action, not really like action movie, but, you know, people are doing stuff, they're not just saying. And you kind of try to follow it, but can't 100% follow what's going on and where things are. You know, there are people in a building, for example, and you can't really picture it when he said, like, you know, he turned to the left and saw X, and like, okay, so X was on his left, but I thought that he was on the top floor and X was on the bottom floor, and you know, those kind of things that happened to me throughout this book. So the entire book like seemed like an introduction to this page-and-a-half climax that, like I said, didn't solve anything. And then there was another twist. There was a twist that I thought was really stupid, but, you know, that's just me, and I'm usually okay with those kind of twists. But you have to like build to it, and then there is nothing to build. You know, it was like a biography where things just happen, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and not like other kind of books where things don't just happen, they kind of add and build into a certain point, certain climax. It just wasn't there, and at the last 2 pages, just a solution was introduced, and everything was okay. I mean, I don't want to like to spoil it to you and say, you know, at the ending everything is okay, but you know, the solution was just there, it was just presented, and things just happened to work out in a certain way. It's like a series that someone decided to cancel in the last episode, and then the writers are like, okay, we have one episode to fix everything, to tie all the loose ends, and to make everything, you know, okay in a certain way. It's like Pushing Daisies. If you know the show, you will notice that the last episode everything works out because the show was cancelled. Great show, not the point of this video. And it didn't do it for me, and I'm really sorry. So right now you're probably asking, okay, this is a rant, you obviously hated this book, what was good about it? So first of all, surprisingly, I did not hate this book. Maybe because I wanted to give a woman who wrote a debut novel, which is kind of steampunk sci-fi, a chance, but also because, I don't know, the general idea of this book was pretty cool. I think that's the only merit of this book, that the idea was very good, and I'm wondering if she would have presented this idea to someone else who would write it or something like that, if it would have been different and I would have had enjoyed it. Another point is that I just saw the watch here and it does look steampunk, so I was expecting a real larger than life steampunk world, and maybe that was what got me so disappointed. But even though I said a lot of bad things about it, I do suggest that if you feel like and you have the time and the money, or you just happen to see this book, do give it a chance, because there is a very strong possibility that the thing that I found really annoying will not bother you that much. But I would like to hear your comments if you have read this book and you enjoyed it more than I. And generally, I do say, you know, if you see this book in a shop, you know, give it a chance. At least give it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you'll enjoy it more than me. And if I'll see that she wrote another book, I will also try and give it a chance, because, you know, the concept is good and steampunk is good. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for bearing with me in my rant that I still feel very terrible to do. But, you know, I told the truth. That's how I felt. And if you like this video, if you like the new wonderful quality of my video, which I'm very excited about, please click like to show it. And if you feel like more, please subscribe to my channel if you dare, or visit me on other social media. The links will be down below. And once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye bye.